Wherever you're tuning in from, maybe cruising down a quiet road with the windows cracked, the hum of the engine keeping you company. Or maybe you're curled up on the couch, winding down after a long day. What's on your mind tonight? You ever find yourself in that mood where a good story just hits different? Like when the world's too loud and you're craving something real, something that pulls you in and makes you feel alive. When's the last time you heard a tale that made your heart race? Made you lean in closer, wondering what's going to happen next? Picture this: a dusty diner on a forgotten highway, where the air's thick with secrets, and one small moment, a glance, a whisper could change everything. You ready to step into that world with me? Because this story's got twists that'll keep you hooked, and it all starts with a man, a dog, and a cry for help and no one else saw coming. Imagine pulling off a dusty stretch of Highway 49 in Jackson, Mississippi, on one of those heavy, humid afternoons where the air hangs thick like a promise you can't quite trust. The sun's dipping low, casting long shadows over the cracked asphalt, and the distant rumble of semi-trucks echoes like a heartbeat from the horizon. You step into Lena's Diner, a no-frills spot, with faded red booths, the sizzle of grease popping on the griddle, and an old ceiling fan whirring lazily overhead, stirring up scents of fried onions and strong coffee. It's the kind of place where folks come to escape the world for a bit, but sometimes the world sneaks in anyway. That's where our story begins, with Marcus Johnson pushing through the creaky screen door. Marcus is 38, a black man built like he was carved from the trials he's survived. Broad shoulders that carry the weight of 2 tours in Afghanistan, a faint scar tracing his jawline from a close call in Kandahar, and eyes the color of storm clouds, always scanning, always ready. He's not the type to boast, but if you knew his roots, you'd understand why. Growing up in a tough Jackson neighborhood where the streets whispered stories of Jim Crow survivors, grandmas who marched for rights, and grandpas who outsmarted systems designed to break them, Marcus learned early that vigilance wasn't optional. It was survival. The military sharpened that edge, turning him into a man who could spot a threat in the flicker of a shadow or the pause in a conversation. By his side trots Shadow, his German shepherd companion, a sleek, muscular guardian with a coat like midnight velvet ears, perked like radar dishes, and those piercing amber eyes that seemed to see straight through to your soul. Shadow wasn't just a pet. He was Marcus's partner, trained in the sands of deployment for scent work and protection. Together, they'd logged miles on the road since Marcus hung up his uniform, chasing a peace that always felt one stop away. But peace, that's a tricky thing in a world that preys on the vulnerable. You see, as Marcus settles into a booth ordering black coffee and a plate of ham biscuits, he's unknowingly stepping into a storm. And here's where it gets real. Because stories like this aren't just fiction. They're echoes of what's happening right now in communities like ours. Take those phishing scams that ramped up during the pandemic, targeting Black elders with fake calls from trusted voices, promising help but delivering heartbreak. Why economic gaps leave folks isolated, trusting too easily in a system that's stacked against them. The fallout. Families' shattered savings wiped out, and that deep emotional scar of betrayal that lingers like a bad dream. Compare that to the resilience we've seen before the civil rights movement, where ordinary people like Rosa Parks turned quiet defiance into thunderous change. But the mistakes, oh, they're common. We brush off subtle red flags because of that ingrained politeness, that cultural code saying, mind your business, even when something screams wrong. Trust your gut. It's the first line of defense in a world that preys on the vulnerable. Marcus knew that lesson bone deep from the day a slick-talking veterans charity scammed him out of his hard-earned benefits right after discharge. He thought he'd buried that pain, but as he sips his coffee, Shadow's head snaps up, ears twitching at something across the room. Little did Marcus know that twitch was the first thread unraveling a web of deceit, one that would drag up his own ghosts and force him to face a cry for help hidden in plain sight. But as the tension starts to simmer, let's zoom in on what Shadow sensed first. Shadow's ears perked up, like antennas tuning into a frequency only he could catch, his amber eyes locking onto the far corner booth where the air felt off. You know that feeling, right? That subtle chill down your spine when something in the room shifts like a shadow, moving just out of sight. Have you ever felt it, maybe at a family gathering where smiles hide secrets? Or in a quiet store where a glance lingers too long? That's the vibe creeping into Lena's diner, now pulling Marcus's gaze right along with his dog's. There, tucked away under the flickering fluorescent light, sat Harriet Thompson, a 68-year-old black widow with silver-streaked hair pulled into a neat bun, her frame slight but holding the quiet dignity of someone who'd weathered storms. Her late husband had been a civil rights activist marching in Selma and building that modest family home brick by brick as a legacy against the odds. But now across from her loomed Victor Slade, a slick operator in a crisp navy suit that screamed, "Trust me," while his cold, calculating eyes whispered the opposite. He was leaning in, sliding a thin folder of papers her way, fraudulent deeds designed to strip her of that very home disguised as some protective trust scheme. Harriet's hands hovered trembling as if the pen he offered was a live wire. Then it happened, the signal. 3 soft taps of her finger on the tabletop. Pause. 3 more. And just as Marcus's military-honed instincts kicked in, recalling those nonverbal distress codes from Boot Camp 3. Of anything Knox flashes a cry without words, Harriet let her fork clatter to the floor. It wasn't an accident. It was a lifeline thrown into the void, hoping anyone would grab it. But hold on, because this isn't just diner drama. It's a mirror to the real traps waiting out there, especially in our communities. Think about those grandparent scams that hit black seniors hard down south, con artists calling up pretending to be a desperate grandkid in jail, needing bail money, wired fast. It's not random, it's targeted. Causes run deep post-retirement isolation, when family scatters for jobs, or digital illiteracy in a world gone online, leaving folks vulnerable to smooth talkers who exploit that gap. The effects, devastating. Generational wealth evaporates overnight, homes like Harriet's hard-won symbols of progress, snatched away, fueling cycles of poverty that echo back to sharecropping days. We've seen it spike after disasters like Katrina, where scammers swoop in like vultures on the displaced. And the common slip-up bystanders, like the couple in the next booth or the teens by the counter, assuming it's family business, that cultural norm whispering, "Don't interfere, it's not your place." But silence isn't always golden. Sometimes it's the chain that binds the oppressed, keeping us locked in the same old struggles. Shadow sensed it first, though, that sharp spike of fear pheromones cutting through the diner's greasy haze. His nose twitched, body tensing like a coiled spring, and in that instant a twist hit Marcus like a gut punch. It mirrored his own buried trauma. Years back, fresh out of the Marines, he'd fallen for a fake veterans charity, smooth operators promising aid for his PTSD, only to drain his benefits and leave him scraping by. He'd shoved it down, told himself it was a one-off weakness, but now, watching Harriet's eyes dart, pleading without a word, it all rushed back. Was he projecting his pain, seeing ghosts where there were none? Or was this fate's way of handing him redemption? It reminded him of those black historical trailblazers like Harriet Tubman herself, signaling escapes through coded songs and hidden knocks, turning whispers into weapons against the chains. Marcus's heart raced, doubt warring with duty in his mind. Am I jumping at shadows? Or is this my call to step up? The tension coiled tighter, Victor's voice dropping to a hiss as he pushed the papers closer, oblivious to the storm brewing. But Marcus couldn't just watch anymore. The pull was too strong, dragging his past into the present and setting the stage for a move that would crack this facade wide open. As he rose from his booth, mint tin in hand, ready to test the waters, Marcus stood, his boots silent on the worn linoleum, the mint tin cool against his calloused fingers, as he moved toward the corner booth with the steady gait of a man who'd walked through fire and learned to measure every step. Shadow padded beside him, his sable coat catching the dim diner light, amber eyes still locked on Harriet and Victor, a low rumble in his chest like distant thunder, warning of a storm. The air in Lena's diner felt thicker now, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to crack. You ever been in a room where the silence screams louder than words? Where you know something's about to shift, and you're not sure if you're ready for what's coming? That's where Marcus was, his pulse steady, but his mind racing, piecing together the puzzle of Harriet's fear and Victor's control. He stopped a respectful distance from their booth, his voice low and warm like he was just another neighbor passing through. "Evening, ma'am, sir," he said, tilting the mint tin so it caught the light. "Long roads got me parched. Thought a mint might do us all some good. Helps cut through the coffee aftertaste." It was a small gesture, innocent as Sunday prayer. But Marcus wasn't just offering candy. He was testing the waters, watching for ripples that'd show how tight Victor's grip really was. Harriet's eyes flicked up watery brown and wide with a flicker of hope. But before her trembling hand could move, Victor's long fingers shot out, brushing her arm away with a force that was too sharp for casual. The mint tin stayed untouched, a tiny sentinel on the table's edge. "She doesn't need it." Victor snapped, his voice smooth but edged with ice, his pale eyes narrowing like a snake sizing up a threat. "Mind your own." That's when Shadow's growl deepened, a guttural vibration that sent a shiver through the booth, his hackles rising just enough to say, "I see you." Marcus kept his face calm, but inside his training clicked into gear. Every detail cataloged Victor's tense jaw, the way his suit jacket tugged slightly at the shoulder, hinting at something bulky underneath. A weapon, a bluff. Marcus didn't know yet, but he'd learned in Afghanistan that assuming the best got you buried. And here's the twist that hit him like a freight train as he stood there playing the polite stranger. A voice from behind the counter cut through the haze. Lena Hayes, the diner's owner. A black woman with a silver streak in her braided hair and eyes that missed nothing. They leaned over and whispered, "I know that man. Victor Slade. He's been through here before, sweet-talking old folks out of their deeds. Hit Miss Clara last year, took her savings and her daddy's land. Boom!" The puzzle snapped into place. This wasn't just about Harriet. Victor was part of a bigger web, a predator stalking Jackson's vulnerable, preying on black elders who'd fought tooth and nail for their slice of the American dream. It's the kind of scam that's bled our communities dry. Think back to the 2008 recession when pyramid schemes and shady investment hustles swept through black neighborhoods promising wealth, but leaving families gutted. Why does it hit so hard? Systemic distrust of banks rooted in decades of redlining pushes folks toward friendly faces who turn out to be wolves. The fallout, homes lost, legacies erased, and a shame so heavy it silences victims who think they should have known better. Lena's own aunt fell for one, signing away her church's community lot to a con man who vanished by dawn. The mistake we keep making, letting shame stop us from speaking up, thinking it's our fault when the system's rigged against us. Marcus's jaw tightened, his own past roaring back a scam that stripped his veterans' benefits, leaving him broke and doubting himself, wondering how he'd missed the signs. That wound fueled him now, but it also whispered doubt. What if you're wrong again? What if you make it worse? He pushed it down, focusing on Harriet, whose hands now clutched her faded dress like a lifeline, her eyes darting to him in a silent plea. This wasn't just about her home, it was about her dignity, her history, everything her husband had marched for in Selma. It reminded Marcus of stories his grandma told of coded signals in the Underground Railroad, quiet acts of defiance that turned victims into survivors. Knowledge is power. Educate your elders on red flags to turn victims into victors. Victor leaned back, his smile thin as a blade, unaware that Lena's whisper had just lit a fuse. The diner's hum, clinking dishes, the fan's lazy whirl faded as Marcus locked eyes with Harriet, giving her the smallest nod, a promise that said, "I see you." But the air was electric now. Victor's fingers twitching toward his jacket, and Shadow's growl sharpening like a blade being drawn. Was Marcus ready to push this further, knowing one wrong move could tip the scales? As he stepped back, Mint Tin pocketed his heart, pounded with the weight of what was coming next. The diner's air was still like the world had exhaled after holding its breath too long. Red and blue lights pulsed through the windows, painting jagged streaks across the walls of Lena's diner. Sheriff Carla Jenkins burst through the door, her leather jacket creased from a long shift, her storm gray eyes cutting through the haze with a focus that could silence a riot. Behind her, Deputy Jamal Reed moved with the quick, steady grace of a man who'd learned to keep calm in chaos, his green eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Victor Slade froze his grip on Harriet Thompson's wrist, loosening as the reality hit his game was up. Marcus Johnson stood firm, his broad frame a wall between Victor and the door, Shadow's snarl a low thunder that promised no escape. You ever feel that moment when the tide turns, when the weight of fear lifts and hope rushes in like a river breaking free? That's what filled the diner now, a fragile electric hope that felt like it could light up the darkest corners of Jackson. Carla's voice sliced through the tension, firm but steady, like a preacher calling a congregation to order. Let her go, Victor. Now. Her hand rested on her holster, not drawing, but ready, her presence filling the room with an authority that left no room for games. Victor's jaw clenched, his pale eyes darting from Marcus to Shadow to the flashing lights outside, where two cruisers screeched to a stop, gravel crunching under tires. For a split second, he looked like he might bolt, his hand twitching toward that bulky shape under his jacket. But Shadow's snarl surged, teeth gleaming, and Marcus stepped closer, his gaze unyielding, a silent vow, not on my watch. The fight drained from Victor like air from a punctured tire. His shoulders slumped, and he released Harriet, who stumbled forward, caught gently by Carla's steady arm. "You're safe now, ma'am," Carla said, her voice softening, as she guided Harriet to a nearby booth where the elderly woman's legs gave out tears, spilling down her weathered cheeks. And here's the twist that tied it all together, the one that made Marcus's heart skip. As Harriet sank into the booth, clutching Carla's hand, she whispered, "My husband. He knew your father, Marcus. They marched together in Selma, planned that community center to keep our kids safe." The words hit like a lightning bolt, connecting Marcus's past to Harriet's fight. His father, a quiet hero who'd stood shoulder to shoulder with Harriet's husband, had instilled in him that same fire to protect, to stand up when the world tried to keep you down. It wasn't just chance that brought Marcus to this diner. It was legacy, a thread woven through generations of Black resilience from Selma's streets to this moment in Jackson. The fallout was swift. Jamal cuffed Victor, the steel clicking with a finality that echoed through the diner. A search of Victor's SUV revealed a laptop stuffed with forged deeds, fake debt records, and emails tying him to a scam ring that had preyed on Black elders across Mississippi, exploiting the chaos left by Katrina's aftermath. This wasn't just one crime, it was a system like the Ponzi schemes that gutted communities after 2008, stripping away homes and heritage. Why do these scams keep working? Because they prey on trust, on folks like Harriet who fought for everything and fear losing their legacy to lies. The consequences ripple. Families lose their anchor communities, lose their history, and the shame keeps victims silent. We've seen it in real cases like the NAACP's reports on fraud targeting Black seniors, where one bad signature can mean homelessness. The mistake. Waiting too long to speak up, thinking you can handle it alone. But here's the lesson. From pain comes purpose. Channel your scars into shields for others. Harriet's reunion came the next day on the sagging porch of her modest home, where her daughter Keisha and grandson Tyrone waited, their faces a mix of relief and guilt. Keisha, her auburn hair pulled tight, had tried to warn her mother about Victor, but pride and distance had kept them apart. Now, as Harriet's frail arms wrapped around her, tears melted, that old wedge forgiveness flowing like a hymn. Tyrone, 15 and lanky, promised, "We've got you now, Grandma." his voice cracking with a fierce love that reminded Marcus of his own youth vowing to make his father proud. The scene was a balm, a reminder of what's possible when community steps up like the boycotts and marches that turned whispers of defiance into roars of change. Marcus stood back, shadow at his side, watching the family knit itself back together. Carla approached, her badge glinting. "You saw the signal, Marcus. You acted when others wouldn't. We're starting a senior safety program. Need someone like you, not behind a desk, but out here watching for vultures." Marcus looked at Shadow, whose ears twitched as if he'd already signed up, then nodded. "If it keeps folks from slipping through the cracks, I'm in." That evening, Lena's diner glowed with a quiet celebration. A framed photo hung above the counter. Marcus, Shadow, and Harriet. Her hand on the dog's head, a snapshot of survival. Harriet pressed a hand-knitted scarf into Marcus's hands, blue as a summer sky, her voice trembling. "This is my freedom, Marcus. You gave that back to me." He wrapped it around his neck, the wool grounding him a promise to keep fighting. This story mirrors the triumphs we can all chase. Like Oprah rising from poverty to power, turning pain into purpose. It's a call to see the signals to act, to protect the vulnerable in our own corners of the world. From pain comes purpose. Channel your scars into shields for others. If this story stirred something in you, maybe a memory of standing up or a time you wish you had, drop it in the comments below. Share where you're watching from, and if you believe no one should face the darkness alone, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more stories of grit and grace. Let's lift a prayer together. May we all find the courage to see, to act, and to protect those who need it most. Type amen below and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Because in a world that can feel cold, your voice, your action can be the spark that lights the way.